Hey, everybody. Welcome to another thrill-packed adventure in chaos. I have nothing planned, but I'm going to wander around and hopefully hit a couple of topics that you might find interesting. First of all, let me add a couple of things about the bass amps and negative feedback. I think one of the crucial things is that, as I was talking about in the last one with the hi-fi amps, the no negative feedback, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's been a key in our bass amps ever since the D180. And then we go up to the Bass 400, the 400 Plus, the Strategy 880. And a couple of things I remember is when we were working on those amplifiers, we had some great bass players up in the tone lounge. And I remember, well, let me add just a little bit of negative feedback. It'll help it spec and it may make it sound better. It will certainly make it more linear and what did you do? You just killed it. And it was like 2%. It was the slightest amount of net. It just died. Oh, there it is. It's back. Oh, it's alive again. That was the key word. And it was interesting because this was a long time ago, but musical instruments, at least the great ones, they have a long-lasting history. And I'm proud to say that Neil Young, according to my good pal Larry Craig, uses our Bass 400 and insists that whoever's playing with him does so, partly because it has no negative feedback. Now, I happened to be at a rehearsal, this was a long time ago, for the Jackson family. And it was pretty interesting because we were at some big studio. The door opened. I could see this new Bentley out back. In walks Jermaine, and he's just as nice as he could be, Jermaine Jackson. And we had a 400, I don't even know if it was a plus setup. And he plugs into it. Oh, man, this thing is alive. That's what I'm using. That's what I'm using. Well, guess who was there? The rep from Yamaha, who was sponsoring the tour. And he was cool because you don't argue with the Jacksons. So he says, okay, if that's what you want to use, that's what you're going to use. However, it can't show. And the Yamaha amp must be what people see. And so I got kind of a kick out of that. It wasn't the first time I've heard about our amps being hidden away while somebody is playing the product they're endorsing. But I thought to myself, well, which would you rather be? The real thing behind the scene or the false flag that's out in front? Well, you know the answer to that, or at least you know what my answer would be. Hey, I wasn't doing this for glory, nor was I doing it for money. Yeah, I needed enough money to get out of abject poverty. But one of the keys, and I'm passing on a very important tip to you guys right now, so listen up. Avoid debt. Don't borrow money. The only exception where borrowing money makes sense is on real estate. And even there, you got to be careful. But don't go get a reverse mortgage or a second mortgage and all of the rest of that stuff so you can get some money out, have some fun. No. At that point, your work is up for risk. And a dear friend of mine goes back to, he was just a 15-year-old. He was smart enough to get his dad, who had a fair estate, to, hey, Dad, don't wait till you're dead. Give me some money now. Well, 60 years ago, he bought a ranch out in Nicasio, California. And man, the guy worked his ass off. He built a great house, a pond. He farmed grapes, pigs, cattle, rabbits. The guy did everything. But he is losing after 60 years. His ranch is in foreclosure. Totally breaks my heart. Because again, I don't know if you can make a living being a small-time producer, even in Marin County, in the wilds of Marin out there by Lagunitas. I don't know if it's possible anymore, but it certainly wasn't because the guy was stupid or lazy. He was smart, he was talented, he worked his butt off, and yet the bank is taking it. Wow. Okay, so how did I manage to get my toe in the door? Well, as you know, if you've listened to any of these podcasts, I bought this old falling down cabin in about 1970. I don't even remember when it was. Back in Lagunitas. It was literally on the verge of falling down. I jacked it up. I worked on it for years. We expanded it. I built another place next door, which was the studio upstairs for Raven, and downstairs was the first shop where I rebuilt Mercedes-Benz engines. and then build amplifiers simultaneously. And this was the place where I mentioned I got the redwood for $35 a thousand board feet. Now, it's probably about $35 for 2 board feet now for redwood. So that was an opportunity that, because of my youth and the fact that I had been born at a great time, the greatest time, I think, in human history. Sad to see that time passing with the world in turmoil. So yeah, one thing led to another. I built the shop so we had no overhead and could make amplifiers at home, no overhead. In fact, here's a little sidelight. See, this is what happens once I get reminiscing. One of the early customers, and we were selling everything mail order, right? And this was rare. Now, you guys mail order now, mail or, well, there was mail. Nobody uses the mail. But this was unheard of. Who's going to send your money to some nut job up in the redwoods? Well, because I was as honest as possible, a lot of people did, and they didn't seem to have. This one guy, he was going for his Harvard MBA, Master's of Business Administration, and he said, look, one of the things you have to do is you have to go consult with a business. And I will offer, because I so love this amp, let me come out and for no charge, I will consult with how you're running your little company. So he does. And I show him around, I show him how we're doing everything. And he says, stop, wait a minute. He's got this grin. He's saying, I'm not going to tell you how to run the business. I'm going to go back and tell everybody else. This is the best run business I've ever seen. I can't believe it. You have basically no overhead for the rent because you're doing it at home. You have absolute control over your labor because everything is piecemeal. You have your wife's sister doing these circuit boards for which she gets paid $5 a board. And if she works, which she does, she can make more money of that than almost anything else. Yet, it's $5 for this circuit board. This one is also $5. So you know what your labor cost is. Oh, the guy that does, and this was Frank Goodman, the guy that does the little shielded cables and the foot switch boxes. And about that time, Frank comes up on his bicycle, Spring Road in Lagunitas, with his basket full of foot switches and shielded cable. And he said, yeah, I just smoke up a doobie and sit there and watch TV, and I'm making money. and then the guy goes on, oh, man, and you've got prepaid. Or all your orders are prepaid. You don't make it until the guy is paid for it. And you got a back order that's how long? I said, well, it's about a year now. Holy smokes. This is the best run business I've ever seen. Well, it was too good to last. We had to move out of the house there, partly because truckloads just couldn't turn around. It was a dead-end road that was inaccurately shown on a map as continuing back to Sir Francis Drake. So these big tractor trailers would get up there. No, it's a dead-end road. So, and again, I'm trying to be hurry here. So under advice from a guy, Bill McDevitt, who was just a great mentor of mine, he brokered a deal with an old farmer up in Petaluma, and I basically bought this muddy cow pasture and regretted it almost instantly. Scared me to death because this is more responsibility than I want. I got the perfect business here. Remember that scene of coming back down the hill with the dogs from my walk, seeing out there on the deck in a ray of sunshine under the trees are my lovely wife, Raven, and 2 neighbors stuffing circuit boards with their tops off, just chatting and enjoying life. Sorry, it doesn't get any better than that. So the money, my theory about money is you got to have some. It's like air. But once you have some and you have enough to be comfortable, that's all you need. And I want to switch on to a couple of guys, one in particular, and he did this in a very respectful way. He said, well, maybe, he deserved me to be able to cash out after all the work that he did. He deserves to make a lot of money. Well, I want to say yes and no. I want to remind you all that if it was about me making money, I would not have gladly given most of the ownership to the top guys and covered their tax liability on that. There's something that, again, you guys may not realize, but so you give away a percentage of a company, And suddenly the tax man says, well, now you owe, in this case, it would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes that they wouldn't have had. Yeah, hey, here's a great deal. Now you're partly responsible for everything. At any rate, so they also are the ones that that got the most of the bank when Gibson purchased Mesa Boogie. So was I in it for the money? No, because again, I got this. If you don't have air, you can't live. But once you've got enough air to breathe, having more air does not really allow you to breathe anymore. That's not a perfect example of money, but it's good enough. But the point about debt is you are at risk. Somebody else has control over the assets that you've achieved. And I've seen that ruined our whole deal in Germany, where prior to the EU being formed, you had to deal with each company separately, each country separately. And yeah, boogies were everywhere. Like I said, we sold to 37 countries out of our house in Lagunitas. But for example, the safety deal, the safety regulations, it's a freaking racket. Trust me, it has nothing really to, at least in guitar amps, to do with safety. Nevertheless, for Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, you have Femco, Nemco, Demco, and Semco, each one of which you have to apply and go through the whole safety regimen, regulation, and money to sell maybe 6 amps in their country. We didn't do that. We skated because we were small enough. The point of the EU was to get rid of that, and that was good, and it started. We built a warehouse in Germany so that we could do distribution throughout Europe without having to need a separate distributor in each country, right? That makes a lot of sense. Well, the problem was the guy who ran that and was a 20% owner, I was an 80% owner. He was big time Charlie. Oh man, so he borrowed tons of money and business was good. But as always happens, business comes and goes. It goes in cycles. And so when it goes down, he's got this incredible overhead. I finally went back there and I said, how many people do you have here? You're just distributing. Well, we have 10. I said, you got 10 people to distribute to Europe. We have 3 and we distributed to the entire world and Europe. What are you doing with 10? And what do you do? Well, I'm in charge of strategic planning. And I said, well, I think you've strategically planned your demise here. There's no way you can support this when business turns down. No, it's wonderful. Oh, if you think so, my 80% is up for sale. You should buy it if you're that confident. And he said, I am that confident. So he did. He bought me out. A couple of years later, the whole thing collapses. Predictable. I mean, I could see it right there. It was so freaking obvious. Dude, you will not be able to sustain a business in a downturn because the bank is coming after you. Well, the bank couldn't come after him because he had no assets. All he had was debt, right? This is the message. So they go after us. And us, well, we lost our shirt because the guy never paid, $1 million worth that he owed us. And for us, $1 million was huge money. For Deutsche Bank, I don't know what his total loan was, but I'm sure it was a poquito percentage of Deutsche Bank. So Deutsche Bank sues us. And here's where lawyers, you know how I hate lawyers. So I am advised, you need a real smart lawyer, and let me recommend this big shot in New York. Well, did he ever make the error of all time? He says, what you need to do is you need to sue them back in your district so that you're in control of it. Right. The only trouble is that overlooked the fact that I and Mesa Boogie had no assets in Europe. Therefore, the Deutsche Bank lawsuits could not touch us until we followed his advice and sued them. Then they could. And they did. And they sued us and lost. And so they sued me personally and lost. Then they changed the description slightly, and sued Mesa Boogie again and lost. And they sued me again personally, and I'm in court. And at this time, they didn't even show up in court, and they lost again, right? Okay, this is the corporation, and that's one other thing I want to get into right now. The corporation. Okay, corporations are created as an investor vehicle, right? And the investors are interested in one thing primarily, if not exclusively, and that is a return on their investment. They don't care if you're making shoes, making loans, or making guitars and guitar amps. They want money. They want to invest, and they want to get a good return. What about me? Well, back to the Lagunitas days, I was trying to avoid starving, but I really enjoyed building stuff, and I had this rarefied concept of a musical instrument as a special, almost mystical, holy thing. Because again, as a horn player, coming from a family with a father as a horn player, it's magic shit, your instrument. And there's a permanence to musical instruments. They don't age out. They look at Les Pauls, look at Strat, look at saxophones, look at pianos. This shit is timeless and has intrinsic value. Well, as a starving creative, I don't know what I want to do. I loved electronics and guitar amps, and so I just loved the process. That's why I fabricated the chassis. I fabricated the printed circuit boards. I taught myself screening so I could silk screen them. I had a hot acid bath up until some acid splashed into Raven's eyes. Then we decided we don't want to do that anymore. We etched the boards. We cleaned them, drilled them, stuffed them, soldered them. You get the idea. Okay, because I loved doing that. I loved all the process, and it was surprisingly successful because high gain. We don't have to go back to that. Okay, so are we all over the place? Yeah. Or is anybody still with me? I hope so. Debt, I already talked about. I think we got that enough. The corporation. Yeah, the corporation that bought Mesa Boogie. Come on. We were promised we will leave you alone. Well, that didn't last very long because, again, the other thing about corporations is they seem to think they know better than the companies that they buy. At least that's my experience. And I think it would be prudent if one buys a company to spend some time to learn that company before you go in, upend it, tear everything apart, and change it. Well, I guess I'm not, I guess I see things differently as what actually happened. I am happy to tell you now, after 5 years, that things are returned largely to normal at Mesa Boogie. The good people are put back in the jobs that they do so well. What a shocking idea. Instead of the lead being a truck driver, he's now the lead again. Wow, what an amazing concept. Okay, now, let's talk product just for a second, because where do you get these ideas? Well, because we're a cauldron of lunatics just dreaming this shit up because it's fun and it's exciting. And guitar players love their shit, and I love being the candy man. So let's talk about how did you come up with the push-pull to single-ended? Well, we had done the LoneStar, and then we said that was with 4 6L6s. And again, as you go back to whatever video it was that I talked about that, it was kind of a seriously upgraded Mark I. Well, how about a lower power one? Yeah, the LoneStar Classic with 4 EL84s instead of 4 6L6s, excuse me. And then I'm talking to Steve Mueller, Tex, the deacon, who also was questionably fired by the corporation. You couldn't find a more informed, dedicated, contributing genius than Steve. I guess that's why he had to go too. So he ain't there contributing. But he says to me, because I'm telling him, he said, dude, I think what we should do is I'm going to make it so it can go from Class A-B at about 40 watts to Class A at 30 watts and then down 2 tubes to about 15 watts. And Steve's going, ooh, that's so cool. But could you get it down to 1 tube? And I said, no, you can't do that because the output transformer, the configuration of the iron is really different between push-pull and single-ended. For single-ended, you need an open lamination, picture a horseshoe, to prevent DC saturation of the magnetic field. Now, that doesn't happen in push-pull because the center tap is where the voltage goes in, and then off each side goes the push and the pull. And so the DC magnetic flux cancels out so that the laminations aren't saturated. And Steve's going, well, I think maybe I follow that, but I'm not sure. And so therefore, Steve, you can't just saw the lamination in half when you want to go to single-ended. So I'm thinking, well, that just can't be done. So what? I go swimming. And I'm swimming along in our pond, and I'm going, well, wait a minute. What if you fooled the transformer? The transformer can't tell. What if you turned off the push or the pull? You turned off one side and you put a great big resistor there to just consume the DC, so it still canceled the flux out, and so it didn't saturate. Maybe that would work. Oh, fuck, that's going to be a big-ass resistor. What could you do instead of the resistor? Well, what about the tubes that are already there? Yeah, what about them? Well, if you could figure out a way to have the tubes continue to draw DC, the direct current, so that it cancels the magnetic flux so it doesn't saturate the core, and prevent them from having any AC components at all. No signal in, no signal out. You would only be listening to one side. Wow, maybe that would work. So get out. I got an outdoor shower, rinse off, run in, hook it up, because I got a little lab here. In fact, I'd love to show you. I don't know if this will work right now, but you see this bookshelf? Look at this. This bookshelf swings open, and behind it is my lab. Okay, this is the famous revolving bookstore shelf that when you walk into my office, nobody knows. Where's your lab? I thought you said you had a lab here. Yeah, it's hidden. Okay, so I try this out, and I'm looking at the scope, and I'm doing this thing with the one side. Oh yeah, it's all collapsed, man. That just doesn't. The transformer is just fucked up. It ain't working. And then so I put this load on the other side. Oh man, it fixed that. Now it's no longer core saturating. Wow. So I called up my friendly engineer at the transformer company, and I described this whole thing to him. I said, man, am I just high? Am I just out of my mind, or is this, does that make sense to you? He said, man, that totally makes sense. That's a fucking great idea. So I wrote up a patent and got it. All right, that's enough for now, because if I go on too long, people tune out. And I just want to keep you guys happy and entertained, because I'm the luckiest guy that ever came along to be able to do what I get to do. Yes, I'm a bit heartbroken that I don't get to do it anymore. And so that question is, well, let's see. Now that you've been fired, who benefits? I'll leave you with that one. I'll tell you what I benefit from is hearing from you guys, because my whole thing was, man, I am working for the musician. I am going right to the guy who's buying this instrument to play it and fulfill his, hopefully, musical gratification that I can contribute to. I ain't doing it just because, yeah, give me the money. This is our investment. Now we're going to go public. This is all about the equity move. Yeah, baby, come on. No, it ain't that at all. I was just happy to be an instrument builder, and I love hearing from you guys. So before I rant myself into more trouble, sayonara. Thanks again, everybody. I love you all. Take care. Bye.